Welcome to The Eye Opener. I'm your host, Michael Lewis. A federal judge is accusing mainstream media of being biased. He says the news is dangerously close to being controlled by one party. It looks like Biden has no intention to visit the border anytime soon, as the situation worsens by the day. The 60-day halt of border wall construction is costing $6 million per day. How much longer will the Biden administration continue to waste taxpayers' money? After the Anchorage meeting, we learned the Chinese Communist regime has no intentions to alter its behaviors. What should America's next step be? Okay, my friends, let's take a closer look together. Federal Judge Lawrence Silberman accused the New York Times and Washington Post for their shocking bias against the Republican Party. Silberman issued his concerns in a dissenting opinion last Friday. Silberman said the increased power of the press is so dangerous today because we are very close to a one-party control of these institutions. The federal judge points out the bias of the press is partisan and is an ideological consolidation which is leading to a marketplace of ideas of the same kind. He says, quote, although the bias against the Republican Party, not just controversial individuals, is rather shocking today, this is not new. It is a long-term secular trend going back at least to the 70s. The New York Times and Washington Post are virtually Democratic Party broadsheets, and the news section of the Wall Street Journal leans in the same direction. Silberman says the New York Times and Washington Post are pioneers in becoming the Democratic Party's mouthpiece. Most large papers across the country, such as the Associated Press, the Los Angeles Times, Boston Globe, and nearly all television networks follow this trend of being, quote, a Democratic Party trumpet. The federal judge calls Fox News, the New York Post, and the Wall Street Journal's editorial page notable exceptions to Democrat Party ideological control, although he admits a number of Fox commentators lean as far to the right as the commentators and reporters of the mainstream outlets lean to the left. Silberman warns the first step taken by any potential authoritarian regime is to gain control of communications, particularly the delivery of news. He says, quote, the one-party control of the press and media is a threat to a viable democracy. It may even give rise to countervailing extremism. In 1964, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in the New York Times versus Sullivan case, which exempted media outlets' reliability from state defamation laws in discussing public figures. Silberman says this ruling should be overturned when the media has proven its willingness, if not eagerness, to so distort. It would be a profound mistake not to correct unjustified legal rules like the High Court's 1964 ruling. We've seen countless proof that America today no longer has any fair press. During an interview Monday, former President Trump said, quote, this is not a free press. They don't cover bad things if it happens to be bad for Democrats. It's pretty amazing. You take a look at some of the coverage and some of the travesties that's taking place at the border, and the coverage is not commensurate. A Gallup poll released last year showed that 33% of adult Americans have no trust at all in mass media, and 27% are not trusting the media very much. The political polarization that grips the country is well reflected in partisans' views of the media. A new report shows the pause on the construction of the U.S.-Mexico border wall is costing taxpayers $6 million a day. Biden ordered a 60-day halt to border wall construction among his first batch of executive orders signed on his first day in the White House. Now, the end of the 60-day pause is approaching, but there's been no signal of a final decision on the wall construction from the Biden administration. However, the economic burden on the suspension is significant due to three major reasons. First, material orders placed before the pause cost money. Second, there are expenses for the equipment sitting idle. Third, contractors to idle equipment are entitled to be compensated for rental expenses or cost of ownership. For instance, in Eagle Pass, Texas, a $52 million fence contract is hanging in the balance. The equipment gathers dust and the contractor awaits a decision. Their waiting most likely will go extended as resolving the migrant surge is prioritized over determining the status of the border wall contracts. In one of his statements from March 21st, former President Trump offered the solution. He said, They must immediately complete the wall, which can be done in a matter of weeks. They should never have stopped it. They are causing death and human tragedy, in addition to the obvious drugs that are pouring into our country at record levels from the southern border, not to mention human and sex trafficking. This administration's reckless policies are enabling and encouraging crimes against humanity. Biden told reporters Sunday that at some point he will go and visit the border.
Are you thinking of going to the border?
Say again?
Are you thinking of going to the border?
At some point I will, yes.
And when will you allow the media into those facilities?
It looks like Biden has no intention to visit the border anytime soon. We know his administration has banned all media's access to the border shelters. Even the government of Texas is not allowed to go in and check those facilities. Why, you ask? Because the border facilities are crammed with migrants and COVID-positive cases.
Project Veritas has obtained never-before-seen photographs of what it actually looks like inside this facility. Shocking images showing people wrapped up in what looks like metal foil, laying on the ground, their faces covered. Why won't the administration be honest about this? Why won't they show you these images?
Now, Project Veritas obtained sources saying migrants are separated by age or physical size depending on the room. In some cells, 50 people tested COVID positive over the last few days. Democrat Representative Henry Cuellar leaked a series of photos to Axios. Cuellar said the unaccompanied migrant children are living in 8 pods designed to hold up to 260 people, but the actual number of migrants kept in those pods are over 400. Republican Representative Greg Steube wrote on Twitter, "The human effects of the Biden border crisis are real. Facilities are way over capacity, CBP is overwhelmed, and dangerous criminals are sneaking into our country. Joe Biden and the Democrats need to accept the responsibility and reverse their harmful policies." So the crisis is real, and who is to blame? Migrants are saying they come to the United States because of Joe Biden. A migrant from Brazil admitted he definitely wouldn't want to cross the border when President Trump was in office.
Would you have tried to do this when Donald Trump was president?
Definitely not. Definitely. We had the chance, the same violence that is going on today was there last year. We used to watch the news, and I definitely won't do this.
So did you come here because Joe Biden was elected president?
Basically. The main thing was the violence in my country. And the second thing, I think, was Joe Biden.
A Mexican tent community shares the same aspirations of migrating to America. The tent community quickly formed after Biden announced a pause on the migrant protection protocols and allowed asylum seekers waiting in Mexico to enter the U.S. Nearly 200 tents fill a plaza near the busiest port for border crossing in Tijuana, Mexico. They hope that the Biden administration will open the U.S. border for a period of time without notice, or they could be first in line to claim asylum. However, no evidence supports either theory. But many know Joe Biden is only the front person implementing these plans. An open border is one of the many disastrous radical policies from the far left. Biden himself was a moderate Democrat, at least in the past, which means he alone doesn't have the power to shut these policies down.
He ran with a very clear centrist message. He said, look, I'm Joe Biden, you know who I am. I'm not going to do this crazy left stuff. Yet what do we have? We have an agenda that is completely driven by the power bases within the Democratic Party.
And Joe Biden isn't shy about this. Last week, he referred to the vice president as President Harris. In some sense, Kamala Harris, with a proven record of the far left, is a much more passionate spokesperson than Joe Biden for their radical agenda.
Now, when President Harris and I took a virtual tour of a vaccination center in Arizona,
Biden didn't correct himself during his remarks. According to a transcript provided by the White House, I wonder if there is any truth to this misquote. Last week, the House passed H.R. 6, known as the Dream and Promise Act of 2021, to provide potentially 4.4 million illegal aliens with amnesty and put them on track for American citizenship. All 218 House Democrats and 9 House Republicans voted to support the motion. The amnesty's biggest backers are a series of large multinational corporations and their executives who often provide campaign cash to lawmakers. In March, the corporate executives wrote a letter to the Senate urging, "This important legislation has our strong support, and we ask that you and your colleagues consider and pass it in the immediate weeks ahead." Those who signed off on the letter include tech giants like Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Google, IBM, and PayPal. Some well-known brands like United States Chamber of Commerce, Visa, Starbucks, Target, Airbnb, Spotify, and Uber. Economist George Borges has called mass immigration the largest anti-poverty program at the expense of America's workers and lower middle class. The biggest winners are corporations and investors who can not only keep the cost of labor low, but also have a steady stream of consumers to buy their products and services. Research shows the illegal immigration currently results in more than $530 billion worth of lost wages for Americans. The Congressional Budget Office likewise has repeatedly noted that the unchecked mass immigration has far-reaching economic damage when shouldering the cost involved. If you haven't already, please join me on the Eye Opener Telegram discussion group. The link is down below. And if you want to keep hearing real news that the mainstream media will not tell you about, please consider donating to our show. Our donor box link is in the description. Please like and share this video so more people can see the show. I also want to thank all of you who support us every day. It is our pleasure to be able to deliver you news that matters. Okay, my friends, let's get back to the show. The United States, European Union, UK, and Canada all announced new sanctions on Chinese Communist Party officials Monday regarding the regime's crimes against the Uyghurs. The U.S. Treasury Department targeted 2 more CCP officials with serious human rights abuses in Xinjiang on March 22nd. Although the Biden administration avoided China's top leadership, it was the first coordinated move with the Western world to hold Beijing accountable for its human rights records after Biden took office. The European Union, UK, and Canada together imposed sanctions on 4 CCP officials and 1 Chinese entity on the same day. The EU sanctions targeted a, quote, large-scale arbitrary detention of, in particular, Uyghurs in Xinjiang in China. The listed individuals will have their assets in the EU frozen and be banned from traveling to the bloc. The U.S. sanctions also prohibited EU citizens and businesses from providing any financial assistance to targeted CCP officials. UK's Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab announced the country's first sanctions against CCP officials on Monday. Its press release reads, "The UK will, for the first time, impose asset freezes and travel bans against 4 Chinese government officials, as well as the Xinjiang security body, under the UK's global human rights sanction regime for systematic violation against Uyghurs and other minorities." Canadian Minister of Foreign Affairs Marc Garneau said in a press release Monday, "We are joining our partners in calling on the government of China to put an end to this systematic campaign of repression against Uyghurs and other Muslim ethnic minorities, and to hold those responsible to account. Beside assets being frozen, Canadian citizens and residents are banned from engaging in any activity related to any property of these individuals or providing financial or related services to them." This coordinated Western effort is sanctioning CCP officials comes swiftly after the Biden administration's first in-person talk with Beijing in Anchorage, Alaska last week. The move indicates Washington and Beijing couldn't reconcile their differences over a series of issues, including the CCP's human rights abuses over Xinjiang. The increasingly hostile Chinese Communist regime has no intention to alter its behavior to abide by international rules and consensus. Hopefully, what we saw on Monday is just the beginning. On March 12th, a $27 million settlement to the family of George Floyd has been unanimously approved by the Minneapolis City Council. The Floyd family is settled, but the cities which previously had massive protests for Floyd are not in peace. Since the death of George Floyd, shootings and murders significantly increased in Portland, Oregon. According to Portland police data analyzed by the Maryland Public Police Institute, shootings rose 173% after the riots, while murders spiked 255% in the months following the unrest. Sean Kennedy, a visiting fellow at the Institute, told the Epoch Times that he sees a clear connection between the spike in violence and the demoralization, disempowerment, and defunding of police following Floyd's death. He said, "When the police stand down, criminals step up," is the simplest way to put it. According to a Department of Justice press release, in a federal grand jury in Cleveland, Ohio, charged Major Page, whose real name is Tyree Covers Page, with money laundering, misappropriating $200,000 in donation and wire fraud. Page created a Facebook account in February 2016 titled Black Lives Matter of the Greater Atlanta and registered Black Lives Matter of Greater Atlanta, Inc. in March 2016 with the Georgia State's Corporation Division as a nonprofit charity. He created a devious scheme banking on vulnerable individuals, claiming that all donations made to his charity would be used in support of fighting racial injustices. Page allegedly made more than $450,000 after its tax-exempt status was revoked by the IRS. Facebook recognized the account as a valid nonprofit organization and allowed supporters to make direct donations to the Facebook account up to 4 months after the revoke. It's quite unfortunate that many people with well-meaning intentions are being misused to fulfill the self-interest of others. It makes me wonder whether the donations of kind-hearted Americans who were moved to fight for racial justice after George Floyd's death are helping to solve things or making matters worse. Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson signed near-total abortion ban into state law earlier this month. The governor said the motion intended to make the U.S. Supreme Court review the legality of Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade is a landmark decision by the High Court which ruled the Constitution protects a woman's liberty for abortion without excessive government restriction. Hutchinson said the whole design of the new law makes abortion unconstitutional under Supreme Court cases. The law, known as the Arkansas Unborn Child Protection Act, bars providers from performing abortions except to save the life of a pregnant woman in a medical emergency. The law makes no exceptions for rape and incest. Violations of the law are subject to up to $100,000 in fine and 10 years in imprisonment. He also said, "I would have preferred the legislation to include the exceptions for rape and incest, which has been my consistent view, and such exceptions would increase the chances for a review by the U.S. Supreme Court." The law will be effective 90 days after the Arkansas legislative session is adjourned for the year. This means that the law won't be enforced until summer. Abortion advocates have said they will challenge the Arkansas law in court. American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, of Arkansas criticized the enactment, characterizing the law as cruel and unconstitutional. Holly Dickinson, ACLU Executive Director, said, "Abortion is legal in all 50 states, including Arkansas, and we will fight as long as it takes to keep it that way." To that, Governor Hutchinson said, "We'll see you in court." Georgia Republican Representative Jody Hice declared his bid to unseat Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger on March 22nd. Hice claims Raffensperger's actions in the past election, quote, "creates cracks in the integrity of our elections." Hice said, "Our state deserves a leader who steers clear of scandals and focuses on the incredibly important duties of the office. If elected, my top priority will be ensuring every Georgian's legally casted ballot is counted in future elections." On the same day Hice threw his hat into the ring, former President Trump endorsed him, saying, "Jody has been a steadfast fighter for conservative Georgia values and is a staunch ally of the American First agenda. Unlike the current Georgia Secretary of State, Jody leaves out front with integrity. I have 100% confidence in Jody to fight for free, fair, and secure elections in Georgia in line with our beloved U.S. Constitution." The current Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger's performance during the 2020 election is causing him to lose support. National File reported Raffensperger was denied election as a delegate in his own precinct at the Fulton County Republican Caucus on Saturday, March 20th. One participant in Fulton said, "We are sending a message that we will be heard all around the state. Raffensperger has got to go." About a week ago, the Washington Post made a correction on its own report, which revealed Raffensperger's office leaked falsified information of President Trump's phone call with a Georgia election investigator. Within the Republican Party, the distrust for the Secretary of State is even stronger. Because Raffensperger repeatedly refused to examine accusations challenging the state's election integrity in 2020 last November, former Senator Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, both Georgia Republicans, jointly called for resignation of Brad Raffensperger. Indeed, the Peach State needs a strong leader who's going to reassure voters' confidence in Georgia's future elections. And that's it for today, my friends. Please like and share, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe. Check out these playlists right here for more eye-opening content. You can also follow me on Newmaker, Gab, Parler, and Telegram. Don't forget, please sign up to our email list so that we can always stay in contact with each other. Thank you all, and I'll see you next time.